With every new iPhone comes that one feature that makes you think, do I need to upgrade? Last year with the iPhone 14 Pro, we got a new 48 megapixel main camera and the ability to shoot Apple RAW. And this year with the iPhone 15 Pro, we got the ability to shoot 10-bit Apple ProRes log directly in the camera app. Now, there are probably more similarities between these phones than there are differences. You get the same 48 megapixel main shooter, 12 megapixel wide angle, and 3 times telephoto zoom. They are the same size, the same weight, they feel the same in the hand, and they have the same hole punch dynamic island camera array, whatever you want to call it, at the top of the screen. With so many similarities, this got me thinking, how different are they? Is this clever Apple marketing, or is the iPhone 15 Pro really worth the upgrade? Let's kick things off with photo performance. On paper, these phones truly are identical. To keep things fair, I shot everything in RAW so we have the very best showing from each respective iPhone. Dynamic range-wise, I found the 14 and 15 Pro to be shockingly similar. Take this photo for example. The overexposed building in the background can be recovered on both phones, while there's still plenty of detail in the shadows. Viewing both photos scaled down, like you would typically on the phone themselves, you would have a hard time telling one from the other. Zooming in to 200%, and we can start to see some of the differences, but even then, you really need to pixel peep. After spending some time with photos from both, I can say the iPhone 15 has better contrast in areas where the bright parts of the image meet the darker areas. Sharpness is a touch better, and if we zoom in on this part of the image that shows text over a sculpture, you can see more contrast, a little bit more sharpness, and a touch more detail throughout on the iPhone 15 Pro's image. For the next couple of shots, I'll put up photos shot from each of these phones at the same time of day and the same location. First, we have a scene shot with the wide-angle camera. And here it is again at 200%. Notice just how similar the sharpness and the texturing of the brick wall is. Next, we have a shot looking down a neighborhood street. Dynamic range, sharpness, color, all very similar. Next is a backlit bridge shot with the sun in frame. Again, both photos retain a good amount of detail in the shadow and handle the bright spot of the sun fairly well. And last, we have a shot from street level looking up at some storefronts. And here we have that same shot zoomed in at 200%. Now, if you chose A as the iPhone 15 Pro, you would be correct. For myself, I had to label the photos just so I wouldn't switch them up. To me, the one photo that stood out was the bridge shot. No matter how much I cleaned the lens on the iPhone 14 Pro, I just kept getting this flare, whereas the iPhone 15 Pro seemed to cope with the backlit sun a little better. Looking at separation, the main shooter on both of these phones produces very similar depth of field. To my knowledge, both phones are using the exact same sensor and the exact same lens package, so it makes sense that we're seeing similar performance. Which, speaking of performance, one difference, and this was a bit of an odd one, was the low light performance. Having shot both phones in RAW, I expected to get back images with a bit of noise and grain in them. And this is not a problem. A quick pass through Lightroom for denoising and both images would clean up and be good to go. But that is where I noticed the difference between these two. The iPhone 15 Pro is using some fairly aggressive noise reduction. Now this caught me off guard a little bit because in the photo world, if I would take a raw photo, let's say with my Canon R6, I'm going to get an untouched raw image on the SD card. And even with the iPhone 14 Pro, it seems like we're getting a true untouched raw image. Now, the 15 Pro is definitely giving you a raw image, but with some heavy processing. If you zoom in on the power lines, you can see entire lines missing because of the noise reduction. Now, this isn't a big deal, as most people are never actually going to notice this, but this could explain why the images out of the iPhone 15 Pro appear a little more contrasty and sharper than the 14 Pro. Moving over to video, this is where we're going to find that defining difference between the iPhone 14 Pro and 15 Pro. The inclusion of Apple Log in the 15 Pro completely changes the look and feel of the footage that you get. If you would like to learn more about Apple Log or shooting video with the iPhone 15 Pro, I did a dedicated video explaining everything that I'll link down below. A condensed version of this is footage shot in Apple Log has a much more realistic and pleasing quality to it when it comes to color and sharpness. Looking at the two side by side, and you immediately notice just how unnaturally sharp the iPhone 14 Pro footage is in comparison. I shot both phones with ProRes turned on, ProRes Log with the 15 Pro, regular ProRes with the 14 Pro. The iPhone 15 Pro doesn't have a whack ton more dynamic range, but what it does have is a feel to the footage that just feels so much more high-end than what you can get with the 14 Pro. Now, with all of that being said, if you're like me and own an iPhone 14 Pro and are genuinely happy with it, is the 15 Pro worth it? Well, I think if you use your phone mainly to take photos with the occasional video, I can comfortably say no. The iPhone 15 Pro is not the quantum leap in quality that we got with the 14 Pro in comparison to older iPhone models. I would even say if you shoot a decent chunk of video with your phone, the 14 Pro is still one of the best quality phones out there when it comes to video. But if you want the best of the best, or you plan to shoot an extensive amount of video with your phone, the 15 Pro does have that one feature that you just can't replicate on the 14 Pro, and that is ProRes Log. For me, I'm gonna be sticking with my iPhone 14 Pro. While I can definitely see why somebody might want to upgrade, for me personally, upgrading every single year has never really been my thing. As always, if you have any questions, please leave those down below and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another one.